This is the GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is flyer number 359, part 2, entitled Feminazi Bashing. Continuing straight on. So, to keep things concrete and readily imaginable, picture a small group of well-informed masculists at a feminist demo who verbally attack a feminist speaker who knows nothing about masculist ideas, sprouting her feminazi dogma that masculist scientists can so easily refute. These masculists then harangue her, crushing her intellectually and psychologically, so that she goes away from this experience with a very bruised ego, being made very conscious of several things. For example, A. That women no longer have a monopoly on gender politics. B. That women from now on will have to share the gender political stage with the masculists. C. That since masculists are men, that gender political stage will be quickly dominated by the masculists, the way men dominate everything, given that women lack genius, having 10% smaller brains than men, having won a pathetic 1% of science Nobel Prizes. D. That so many of the core ideas of the feminists are just wishful thinking rather than scientifically verified facts. E. That the masculists have a real hatred of the feminazis and are out to destroy them with male financial power by forcing women to fip up or rot on the shelf. F. Recognising that fluffies are doomed, since a fluffy can only be a fluffy if she can get her financial claws into some gullible manslave. But thanks to the masculists and MGTOW presence on the internet, the supply of such gullible manslaves is drying up as millions of men learn masculist and MGTOW ideas, who wake up to the fact that the traditional role of the man was to be a manslave to a parasitic female, and that thanks to the contraceptive pill, women now have a career window of some half a century, so can work, and therefore must work, or be spat at by the masculists and MGTOWs as fluffy parasites. So, imagine the following dialogue between the feminist speaker and the masculist interjector. F. So, women, we must destroy the patriarchy by increasing our political power. We feminists have to take control of the parliaments and make laws more favourable to women. We need to roll back centuries of oppression of women by men so that we can achieve our full female potential. Down with the patriarchy! M. Interjecting with a very angry, dominating, powerful voice, full of hatred and conviction, in a murderous tone that frightens the women in the meeting hall. You hated feminazi bitches have taken over the divorce courts in all your fluffy feminist hypocrisy and made divorce so toxic for men that in many Western countries now 2/3 of young men refuse to marry, reject paternity and spend their money on themselves. That makes you feminazis indirect genociders who have to be stopped with bullets if necessary. We responsible males, masculine soldiers, will not tolerate that you fluffy feminist hypocrites wipe out whole populations, which is what you are currently doing with your PC feminazi bullshit. Men are the way they are because you women wanted it that way. Women have always had a monopoly over reproduction. It's always the woman who decides which man gets to ejaculate in her to get her pregnant. Women have sexually selected men for millions of years who had the qualities that women wanted. For example, men who were taller, bigger, stronger, fiercer, smarter than women, so that these men could better defend their women against other men. and being smarter would make better hunters and hence be more sexploitable by women, providing women with scarce male-hunted meat that women were unable to obtain for themselves, being stuck at home with helpless infants. Women have always been parasiting on men for millions of years, so evolved to be prostitutes to men, to better persuade men to give them meat in exchange for access to women's vaginas. The patriarchy is largely female-caused, but most of you feminazis are so inscienate, that is, unable to think scientifically due to ignorance of science, and innumerate, that is, can't think mathematically, that you believe feminazi fairy stories instead of scientifically verified explanations of the patriarchy. You monoconscious feminazis know nothing about masculism, with its claim that women oppress men far worse than vice versa, due to women's financial parasitism, etc. Masculism forces women to grow up, to become FIPs, that's financially independent persons, or be punished by being forced to rot on the shelf, totally ignored by men, not even pumped and dumped, so that their fluffy parasite genes are removed from the gene pool, that is, they are annihilated by the masculists. We masculists tell young women to hate you feminazis as much as men do, by telling these young women that the main reason why they can't persuade quality young men that they really want to mate with, to get the superior DNA from these superior men for their kids, is that you feminazi bitches, you fluffy feminist hypocrites, have taken over the divorce courts and made divorce and hence marriage and paternity such a shitty deal, in capital letters, for men, that in many Western countries now, 2/3 of young men choose to reject marriage and paternity. We tell these women that the root cause of their babylessness is the fluffy feminist takeover of the divorce courts. So you feminazis are now hated by both sexes. The social and moral pressure against you will soon become so strong that unless you become biconscious, that is, you absorb masculine ideas and lose your monoconscious feminazi bigotry, then your movement will be destroyed as both sexes crush you. Young women will spit at you for depriving them of babies, and masculine soldiers in the limit will simply go out into the streets in the sex war and just shoot you feminazi vermin for wiping out whole populations in your short-sighted 10% smaller female-brained incompetence and lack of vision. If you want your feminist movement to survive, you will have to come to terms with the rise of the masculist movement. If you don't, you'll be destroyed by the combined pressure of the masculists and young babyless women, both of whom hate you with a passion. So, you ignorant, monoconscious feminazi bigot, learn some masculist ideas, or you may end up with a masculist bullet in your head. Increasingly, society, that is, both sexes, are seeing you as genociders. You have to be stopped. You are hated. You need to be wiped out. Recognize that and learn. Otherwise, there will be a sex war and you will be destroyed. ... The above scene is probably only a few years away, as the number of masculists and MGTOWs keeps increasing, and the level of hatred against the feminazi bitches keeps rising. A sex war is brewing. Look at the lead-up to the US Civil War. The masculists see a close historical analogy between the US Civil War in the 1800s that was largely against the moral abomination of Negro slavery, and the sex war of the 2000s against the moral abomination of man's slavery. About 600,000 US soldiers died in the US Civil War. How many monoconscious feminazis will die in the 21st century sex war when men snap at the massive gender injustice committed daily against them in the fluffy feminist hypocrite-dominated divorce court system? ? There's a limit to male patience against these hated feminazi injustices against men. No culture that financially massacres and destroys the lives of a quarter of married fathers can survive. Men will snap. They will pick up arms and kill their enemies, the hated fluffy feminist bigots, the feminazis, and bring gender justice to men. things have to change. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Man's Slaves to Women, an e-textbook of 350 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses. Freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website.